December 15, 1944. 2:17 a.m. The searchlight cuts through the humid darkness of Cabanatuan Prison Camp like a mechanical eye that never blinks, never sleeps. Guard towers pierce the Philippine night, their wooden frames creaking under the weight of mounted weapons and the casual arrogance of men who believe they hold absolute power over life and death. Private Davidson adjusts his rifle strap and peers down at the shadow-filled barracks below. The beam sweeps left, then right, catching glimpses of skeletal figures hunched over what appears to be woodwork. He squints through the thick tropical air, heavy with the smell of rotting bamboo and human desperation. There, in Barracks C, prisoners are carving, whittling. Their hands move with the practiced precision of men who have nothing left but time and the stubborn refusal to surrender dignity. Davidson sees the crude implements they've fashioned from mess hall spoons, beaten flat against concrete, sharpened against stone until metal becomes blade. He laughs, a short, dismissive bark that cuts through the night silence like a slap across water. Toy blades, that's all they are. Pathetic attempts at, what? Escape? Resistance? The humor spreads across his face as he watches grown men, former soldiers, reduced to playing with makeshift tools like children with wooden swords. What Private Davidson doesn't know, what he cannot possibly understand in this moment of casual superiority, is that his laughter has just sealed a chain of events that will mean the difference between mass execution and miraculous survival. The error isn't in what he sees, it's in what he chooses to ignore. In war, underestimation kills the careless. But sometimes it saves the condemned. This is the story of how a guard's dismissive chuckle became the thread that held 500 lives together when the system designed their elimination finally began to crack. When human ingenuity, dismissed as desperation, transformed into the difference between darkness and liberation. Because what looks like defeat, what sounds like the scraping of worthless metal against stone, is actually the sound of hope being sharpened into something real, something that can cut through more than bamboo and wood, something that can slice through the lie that human beings can be reduced to numbers in a ledger, marked for disposal, forgotten by history. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's step back and understand how we arrived at this moment, where laughter in the darkness would prove to be the most dangerous sound of all. Cabanatuan Prison Camp sits like a festering wound in the heart of Luzon Island, 40 kilometers north of Manila. By December 1944, what once held over 3,000 Allied prisoners has been reduced to a skeleton population of barely 500 souls. The rest, transferred, executed, or simply vanished into the administrative efficiency that totalitarian regimes perfect when human life becomes inconvenient to maintain. These final prisoners are the leftovers, the men too sick to march, too broken to transfer, too stubborn to die quietly. They exist in a liminal space between execution and abandonment, sustained by the Japanese belief that keeping them alive serves some bureaucratic purpose that no one can quite articulate anymore. The camp operates under what the Japanese call reduction protocols, systematic elimination disguised as resource conservation. Food rations have been cut to starvation levels. Medical supplies disappeared months ago. The guards, themselves operating under pressure from advancing American forces, have received increasingly explicit instructions about final disposal procedures for remaining prisoners. Lieutenant Colonel Kawamoto, the camp's administrative officer, maintains meticulous records of prisoner numbers, daily mortality rates, and projected elimination schedules. His reports, filed weekly with regional command, demonstrate the methodical precision with which the Japanese military approaches the problem of prisoner disposal. Everything documented, everything quantified, everything reduced to the clean mathematics of efficient death. What Kawamoto's reports don't capture, what no administrative system can measure, is the persistence of human connection in circumstances designed to eliminate it. The way prisoner Daniel continues teaching mathematics to men who haven't seen a classroom in 3 years. How prisoner Marcus shares his meager rice ration with men too weak to stand in food lines. How prisoner Robert maintains a primitive radio, constructed from scavenged wire and battery remnants, monitoring American communications frequencies for signs of approaching liberation. But most importantly, what the reports cannot quantify is the network of preparation that has been developing in the shadows of dismissive oversight. Because while guards like Davidson see toy blades and pathetic resistance, the prisoners see something different entirely. They see tools. They see preparation. They see the possibility that when the moment comes, when the choice is between passive execution and active survival, they will not face that moment empty-handed. The Japanese system of prisoner management operates on a simple premise. Broken men require minimal supervision. Men reduced to biological survival become predictable, manageable, incapable of organized resistance. The beauty of the system, from an administrative perspective, is its efficiency. Reduce resources, increase pressure, document the resulting deterioration, and eventually process the inevitable conclusion through established protocols. This systematic approach has proven effective across dozens of camps throughout the Pacific Theater. Prisoners arrive with military training, organizational skills, leadership capabilities. Systematic deprivation reduces them to individuals focused solely on personal survival. Community bonds dissolve. Military hierarchy collapses. What remains are isolated men competing for scarce resources, too focused on immediate needs to organize collective action. But Cabanatuan represents an anomaly in this otherwise predictable system. The extended timeline, the gradual reduction rather than immediate execution, has created space for adaptation. And adaptation, when it occurs among trained soldiers, follows patterns that administrative systems don't anticipate. The prisoners haven't abandoned military organization, they've made it invisible. Command structures exist in the rhythm of daily routines. Communication networks operate through the timing of meals, the arrangement of sleeping areas, the subtle signals that pass between men who understand that survival depends on coordination disguised as chaos. When guards observe prisoner behavior, they see compliance. Men standing in formation for food distribution. Men following work detail assignments without protest. Men accepting medical inspection procedures without resistance. What they don't see is the information exchange happening in these moments. The whispered intelligence about guard schedules, communication protocols, structural vulnerabilities that accumulate into comprehensive understanding of camp operations. The tools that Davidson dismisses as toys represent something more sophisticated than desperate whittling. They represent distributed manufacturing, each prisoner specializing in specific tasks, some focusing on blade creation, others on handle construction, still others on testing and refinement. The result is a production system that operates below the threshold of guard attention while generating implements capable of cutting rope, wood, wire, and if necessary, flesh. Daniel sits in the corner of Barracks C, his back against the bamboo wall, hands moving in practiced rhythm as he shapes another handle. Around him, the soft scraping sounds of metal against stone create a percussion section that would be music if circumstances were different. But these aren't musical instruments being crafted in the darkness. They're keys to locks that the Japanese don't realize exist. The process requires patience that only men facing execution can summon. Each spoon must be heated over carefully tended flame until the metal becomes malleable, then beaten against concrete foundation stones until it flattens into primitive blade shape, then sharpened with obsessive attention to detail because the difference between sharp and dull might be the difference between cutting rope and dyeing with bound hands. But the tools serve multiple purposes beyond their obvious applications. The process of creating them builds morale in men who have been systematically stripped of agency. The ability to make something, to transform waste material into useful implements, restores the sense of competence that imprisonment seeks to eliminate. When a man can turn a discarded spoon into a functional blade, he remembers that he possesses skills beyond passive endurance. More importantly, the manufacturing process creates opportunities for communication that guard observation doesn't detect. Men working on adjacent tool projects can exchange information about guard schedules, radio intercepts, physical conditions of fellow prisoners, estimated timelines for various contingencies. The casual conversation that accompanies craft work becomes intelligence briefing disguised as social interaction. Marcus specializes in handle wrapping, using strips of cloth torn from deteriorating uniforms to create grips that won't slip when hands are wet with sweat or blood. His position near the barracks entrance allows him to monitor guard movement patterns while maintaining the appearance of focused concentration on immediate tasks. Over months of observation, he has documented the timing of shift changes, the personality differences between individual guards, the subtle variations in patrol routes that create brief windows of reduced surveillance. What he has discovered forms the foundation for escape planning that extends far beyond individual breakout attempts. Marcus has mapped the entire camp security system, not just the physical barriers and guard positions, but the psychological patterns that determine when guards are alert and when they operate on automatic assumption that prisoners remain safely contained within established behavioral boundaries. The intelligence Marcus gathers flows through informal networks to men like Robert, whose technical background enables him to maintain communication equipment that shouldn't exist under camp conditions. The radio he operates represents perhaps the most sophisticated violation of Japanese security protocols, constructed entirely from components that guards either don't recognize or don't consider threatening. Wire stripped from electrical systems damaged by bombing raids, battery elements salvaged from abandoned equipment, antenna components fashioned from metal removed from building structures, crystal elements extracted from broken timepieces, each component acquired through patient accumulation over months of careful observation and opportunistic collection. But the radio serves purposes beyond monitoring American communication frequencies. Robert has discovered that Japanese communication protocols follow predictable patterns, and patient monitoring has revealed timing for shift rotations, supply deliveries, administrative communications that indicate changes in camp management policies. When these signals suggest increased pressure for prisoner elimination, the intelligence flows through established networks to men responsible for coordinating defensive preparations. Tonight, Robert hunches over equipment that represents the collective engineering expertise of multiple prisoners, listening to frequencies that carry both hope and warning. American forces are advancing faster than Japanese administrators anticipated. Radio chatter suggests liberation forces are closer than guard estimates indicate. But the same communications reveal increased pressure from Japanese command to resolve prisoner issues before American arrival creates complications for regional withdrawal strategies. The intelligence is both encouraging and terrifying. Liberation is approaching, but may not arrive before elimination orders are implemented. The window between hope and execution is narrowing with each passing day, and the tools being crafted in shadow-filled barracks may represent the only buffer between systematic murder and survival long enough for rescue to become reality. When Robert signals the latest intelligence through established communication protocols, the information reaches men who have spent months preparing for exactly this scenario. Not just escape attempts, but coordinated response to mass execution orders. Because if the Japanese decide to eliminate all remaining prisoners before American arrival, passive resistance won't suffice. The choice will be between organized defense and systematic slaughter. The preparations extend beyond individual tools to coordinated planning that operates below guard attention while remaining ready for immediate implementation when circumstances demand action. Sleeping area arrangements that optimize communication and movement. Work detail assignments that place trusted men in strategic positions. Food distribution timing that enables rapid assembly without obvious violation of camp routines. But most importantly, the preparations include psychological conditioning that transforms defeated prisoners into potential combatants. Daily discussions that maintain military identity despite systematic humiliation. Physical training disguised as routine camp activity. Mental rehearsal of scenarios that require split-second decision-making under extreme pressure. Dawn arrives with the mechanical precision that military routine demands, but morning light reveals subtle changes that indicate accelerated timelines. Guard behavior suggests increased tension. Radio chatter indicates administrative pressure from regional command. Food distribution follows modified protocols that suggest resource conservation rather than sustained maintenance of prisoner population. The signs accumulate into pattern recognition that experienced prisoners understand without explicit communication. The elimination timeline has been accelerated. Days, not weeks. Perhaps hours, not days. The abstract threat of eventual execution has crystallized into immediate danger that requires immediate response. Lieutenant Colonel Kawamoto receives the orders during routine morning communication with regional headquarters. Clean, efficient, documented according to established protocols. All remaining prisoners are to be eliminated before December 18th. American forces are advancing faster than anticipated. Prisoner disposal must be completed before liberation forces arrive to complicate withdrawal operations. The orders specify method, timing, documentation requirements. Everything reduced to administrative efficiency that transforms mass murder into bureaucratic procedure. Kawamoto acknowledges receipt, confirms implementation capability, requests clarification on documentation storage for post-execution administrative review. What Kawamoto doesn't realize, what administrative efficiency cannot anticipate, is that his radio communications are being monitored by equipment that shouldn't exist, operated by men who shouldn't possess technical capabilities for signal interception, processed by networks that shouldn't be able to coordinate information distribution among prisoners who shouldn't retain organizational capabilities. When Robert intercepts the execution orders, the intelligence flows through established communication networks with the urgency that transforms months of preparation into immediate activation. The tools that guards dismissed as toys become weapons that could determine survival. The coordination that appeared to be random social interaction becomes military organization capable of defending against systematic elimination. But the response requires perfect timing. Move too early, and security protocols eliminate any possibility of success. Move too late, and execution orders proceed before resistance can organize. The window for action exists in the space between guard expectation and prisoner capability, a space that months of careful preparation have created and maintained despite systematic surveillance. The decision falls to men who have been stripped of rank, authority, resources, hope. Everything except the stubborn human refusal to accept that administrative efficiency can reduce individual worth to numbers in elimination ledgers. When the choice is between passive acceptance of mass murder and active resistance that might enable survival, the choice becomes obvious even when success seems impossible. December 17, 1944, 11:43 p.m. The Searchlights sweep across barracks where 500 men face their final night under administrative protocols designed for their systematic elimination. But instead of passive acceptance, the darkness conceals preparation that has been months in development. Tools that guards dismissed as toys. Communication networks that surveillance failed to detect. Military organization that systematic humiliation couldn't eliminate. Private Davidson adjusts his rifle and peers down at shadows that seem different tonight. More organized, more purposeful. The scraping sounds from Barracks C have stopped, replaced by silence that suggests completion rather than abandonment. Whatever the prisoners were crafting in the darkness has been finished. He should investigate. Military protocol demands verification of suspicious prisoner activity. But the investigation would require leaving his guard position, entering prisoner areas, confronting men who have nothing left to lose. Davidson chooses to remain at his post, maintaining distance that preserves the illusion of control while avoiding direct confirmation of activities that might require action he prefers not to take. The choice, this moment of lazy complacency, creates the final space that prisoner preparation has been designed to exploit. When guards choose convenience over vigilance, when administrative routine substitutes for active security, when systematic dehumanization creates blind spots in surveillance, those spaces become opportunities for human agency to reassert itself against systems designed to eliminate it. What happens next occurs in the space between searchlight sweeps, when darkness provides cover for movement that months of planning have choreographed with precision that would impress military observers under different circumstances. When tools that appeared worthless prove capable of cutting through more than bamboo and wire. When men who seemed broken demonstrate coordination that transforms individual desperation into collective action. The execution orders will not be implemented. Not because administrative efficiency fails, but because human preparation succeeds. Not because systematic dehumanization doesn't work, but because individual dignity finds ways to persist despite institutional attempts to eliminate it. Not because guards like Davidson are incompetent, but because their dismissive assumptions create opportunities they never anticipated. When morning light reveals 500 empty barracks and guard towers manned by confused personnel trying to explain how mass prisoner elimination became mass prisoner liberation, the administrative reports will struggle to explain what happened. How men reduced to biological survival organized sophisticated escape operations. How prisoners dismissed as broken retained military capabilities. How tools that guards laughed at became implements of liberation. But the real story, the truth that administrative efficiency cannot quantify, is simpler than bureaucratic analysis suggests. Human dignity proves more resilient than systems designed to eliminate it. Individual worth transcends administrative attempts to reduce people to numbers. And sometimes the laughter that accompanies casual cruelty becomes the sound that alerts resistance to opportunities for survival. In war, underestimation kills the complacent. Tonight, it saved the condemned. Because when guards choose to laugh rather than look closely, when administrative routine substitutes for active attention, when systematic oppression creates assumptions about human capacity for resistance, those assumptions become vulnerabilities that human ingenuity can exploit. The tools were never toys, the men were never broken, and the laughter, the dismissive chuckle that echoed across Cabanatuan Prison Camp on December 15, 1944, became the sound of 500 lives choosing survival over surrender, dignity over defeat, human worth over administrative efficiency. Liberation arrived the next morning to find empty barracks and confused guards. But liberation found what it came to save, not bodies, but souls that refused to accept that circumstances could determine worth, that systems could eliminate dignity, that laughter could be the final sound that broken men hear before systematic elimination reduces them to footnotes in military records. Sometimes the error that seems fatal becomes the mistake that saves everything. Sometimes the choice to dismiss becomes the decision that enables. Sometimes the laughter in darkness becomes the sound of light breaking through.